started when an alien device did what it did. It stuck itself upon his wrist with secrets that it hid. Now he was granted superpowers and is no longer an ordinary kid. This is Ben 10, one of the most popular shows in Cartoon Network history. In fact, it's safe to say that the series is one of the biggest cartoon franchises ever. This is thanks to the show's characters and action, but mainly its extremely unique premise, which focused on a kid becoming slimy, creepy, fast and strong in every shape and size with a twist and push of a button, which captured the minds of children all over the world. However, with such a unique concept, it makes you wonder how the series creators Man of Action possibly came up with this unique idea. Let's take a brief look at the early development of Ben 10 to see how this kid turned into an alien before our very eyes, by first discussing the very first version of the series. Ben 10 was originally pitched in 2002 to Cartoon Network by a group of creatives named Man of Action, consisting of 4 comic book creators: Duncan Rouleau, Joe Casey, Joe Kelly, and Steven T. Seagal. Developed for 3 years before the initial pitch. The basic idea of Ben 10 was a boy who could transform into 10 superpowered individuals using a device mounted to his wrist. The idea was inspired by a DC property called Dial H for Hero, where when an individual types in the word hero onto a spherical device called the H-Dial, they were able to transform into a random superhero that comes with a preset costume and superpower. It's also been established that you can transform into a pre-existing hero as well. Man of Action seemed to love this idea, as their pitch was essentially identical to this concept. Artist Stephen E. Gordon was one of the first conceptual illustrators to be brought on to this project, and as you can see, he very much embraced this original envisioning of the Ben 10 story. Ben is capable of transforming into 10 superheroes with their own distinct designs. Now, since these illustrations lack any kind of info, we have to speculate on what some of them could do. Now, the most noticeable aspect of the art is Ben himself, as his design is quite different from the final version, sporting an orange t-shirt, red hair, and green pants. In this image, we get a closer look at this Ben's design, but with longer pants, a slightly different orange shirt, and yellow eyes. Eventually, Ben's design would evolve into the one in the final show, but with slightly different t-shirt designs. Especially this one, which appears like the same kind of shirt he wears in Ben 10 Omniverse. However, the most important aspect of the early Ben 10 design is the Omnitrix. In this art, the Omnitrix appears like a glowing orb with strands shooting out and wrapping around Ben's arm. The Omnitrix here looks like a parasite of some kind, and due to its simplicity, it's hard to imagine how he selected his aliens. This Omnitrix would eventually evolve into this one, which more closely resembles a traditional watch. The Omnitrix still maintains its yellow glow, replacing the green color we've become so accustomed to, with many tiny orange dots to represent each transformation. There's also 2 orange buttons at the far ends of the watch, which likely serve the same purpose as the final Omnitrix, which allowed the middle section to rise up and down. The concept of superheroes was cool and all, but perhaps the creative team felt it was not unique enough. Because of this, the concept would be tweaked from time to time. One of the earliest ideas for Ben 10 was that Ben would be able to transform into 10 alternate universe versions of himself. The series at this point was titled Ben to the 10th, and the Omnitrix was called the
Megadeoxyribonucleic transdimensional transforminal numerator,
or the Megawatt for short. However, eventually this idea would be shelved, and the concept would continue to evolve further. Eventually, a writer named Greg Johnson came up with the idea of Ben being able to transform into aliens, and although he never ended up being credited in the series, this idea would go on to shift the direction of Ben 10 forever. Now Stephen E. Gordon updated his initial concepts to include a larger variety of superpowered individuals with more diverse forms and body types, clearly leaning into the alien idea more closely. There was Digger, a rodent-like character in a red bodysuit who used his claw-like hands to dig and tunnel quickly, likely the original Wild Mutt. Dragonfly is an insectoid-like human figure, wearing a green bodysuit with wings sprouting from his back. This was likely the original Stinkfly. Ghost Freak, who shares the same name as his final iteration, wears a blue and orange suit with an orange body and a strange orange mask with a large grin and dreads. It's likely it behaves similarly to the final iteration and would have likely turned out to be evil, just like the final version, as Man of Action had envisioned Ghost Freak as a villain very early on. Gray Matter looked strikingly similar to his final iteration, however with a stronger resemblance to the traditional gray alien look and more spindly limbs. Gray Matter is also one of the only aliens with an Omnitrix-like item on his body. Inferno has the same kind of design language as Heat Blast in the final show, with the cracked volcanic body. The only significant difference is the stronger humanoid look and the green underwear he's wearing. Plant Guy is basically Wildvine, but with more of an emphasis on bark covering his body, which actually makes him more like a tree than vines. Razor Jaws is a large purple fish creature who walks on all fours, who is likely supposed to be the early version of Ripjaws. Strong Guy is clearly meant to be 4 arms, but looks significantly different, taking on a more green color scheme with purple patterns in a green bodysuit with straps, which may actually be the Omnitrix, as it has a similar kind of design language. What's interesting is that this concept of straps that appears like the Omnitrix was reused for 4 arms in Ben 10 Alien Force. This yellow alien has tubes connecting to his body, bolts connected to his knuckles, and he's wearing black body armor of some kind. It's by far the most techie looking alien so far, and that's because this was meant to be the early version of Upgrade, who in the final version takes on a more black and white goopy form with green tech lines running over his body. Finally, there's this alien who's blue, wears a sleek black bodysuit, and is striking a running pose, ready to take off running. Now obviously, this alien is meant to be the early version of the alien Accelerate, who looks more like a techie dinosaur in the final version. Unfortunately, Man of Action would end up rejecting Stephen E. Gordon's concepts for the aliens, likely because it didn't quite fit in with what they were looking for. So they actually continued to develop the show with no set in stone alien designs. That was until they brought on the artist Dave Johnson. When Dave first came onto the project, Man of Action basically told him that he had a very limited amount of time to develop the alien designs, as they no longer had the time to slowly develop the series. So armed with massive time constraints, Johnson began developing the designs that would come to be the iconic looks we all know from the series, with only descriptions of what the aliens were like, as Johnson was not permitted to look at other conceptual work for the series. Most of Johnson's designs were approved of immediately, but some of the designs were tweaked to make sure Cartoon Network would approve of the looks. Stinkfly went through dramatic changes in terms of his face, especially his eyes, and most notably his body type, which takes on different insect-like forms like a traditional fly and a cockroach. Ghost Freak looks distorted and creepy, with his head looking like a human skull, which was actually reused in the later Ben 10 series. Cannonbolt looked radically different early on, taking on the form of an insectoid-like creature with no eyes and his protruding skin connecting to bowl-like structures. When he turns into a ball, these balls would enclose on the alien, and a series of knobs would eject from the bowl, shooting out rocket blasts to speed up his ball form. The final Cannonbolt looks nothing like this original version. Heat Blast goes through one of the most radical redesigns. His early concepts are interesting to say the least. First of all, His face seems to possess a Rorschach-like patterning. His body is no longer covered in volcanic rock, and it's almost as if he's wearing a bodysuit of some kind. And the sheer heat that the character emits leaves his body through volcanic-like protrusions on his shoulder and head. This heat blast is more like a living furnace, which looks normal on the outside, but ejecting heat through different structures on the suit, bursting into flame once this outer exoskeleton becomes broken. Similar to the alien NRG from Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, the concept of volcanic-like protrusions would later be reused in Ben 10,000's transformation. Finally, there's Gray Matter, whose early designs once again looks like a traditional gray alien, but would eventually evolve into the character we all know.
And some big-time get-backs. Maybe a face full of stinkfly goop, or a tangle of wildvine tendrils, or...
Gray matter? Oh no! I forgot I zeroed out the master control!
Interestingly, it seems like Johnson had a different envisioning of what the Omnitrix symbol would look like, as its early concepts takes on the form of a triangular and fidget spinner-like appearance. However, eventually the design would be tweaked into the final hourglass we all know, and besides, some other changes, like Diamond Head replacing Cannonbolt as one of Ben's original 10 aliens, Gwen being changed to Ben's cousin instead of friend, and Grandpa Max no longer being a crazy inventor. The final version of Ben 10 was now set in stone, and from here on out, history would be made.